So this video, we will start working on the beginner's guide to SDL2 and CppF2. So in the last video, we set up our environment. So you will need to go to GitHub Programming Rainbow, Beginner's Guide to SDL2 and CppF2. You'll need to clone that, and inside of that, you'll also need to have already cloned Herb Sutter's CppFront and compile it. That was all covered in the first video. So with those two things, let's start talking about SDL2. So SDL2 is a library that, here we go. SDL2 is a library that helps you make windows, to draw things to the windows like 2D images, text, things like that. You get control from your mouse and your keyboard. You have an audio system. So it's a very low-level library written in C that allows you to do all these things. So it's kind of the basis for a lot of other 2D gaming projects. And it is even used in other projects, maybe that could be 3D, where they just need sound or something else from SDL2. So yeah, that's SDL2. So in this video, we will be just setting up SDL2 and opening a window. That is going to be the entirety of it. So we'll need to initialize SDL, and we will be initializing, and we're going to initialize everything. This will give us the sound system, so we won't be using as the flag. So this is the function to initialize SDL. It's SDL init. It returns an int, which is going to be 0 on success, and we can pass flags into it. And the flag, like I said, is just going to be everything. Right here, this one, SDL init everything. This is just going to turn on all the systems for us, and we're just going to leave it at that. And then when we initialize it, we also need to close it down. So this one is a void function, and it has no parameters. So let's set those two up. So we already have from our last video, if you're just joining this video, you can just grab the code from video 1 and copy it into the source folder. You only need the, you don't need two files here. The other one is generated from us. Yeah, we don't need to worry about that at all. So we're just going to be working in the main CppF2 file. So for the first thing that we're going to need is to include SDL2. So CppF2, pure CppF2 only works with modules, and that's great if something has a module available to it, if it's set up that way. Most libraries, even C++ things, are not. So we will be using include instead of import, just because we can't even do that with SDL2 because it's not a C++ library, it's a C library. And it depends on where your SDL2 is installed. Mine is installed in the standard directory that SDL2 for Linux is installed, which is the SDL2 subfolder in the includes folder. So that for me, it will be SDL2, SDL.h. And if yours is in another location, you're going to need to know what you've done with your system. I can't really help you with that one. We're also going to need another library, the format library that just helps us format strings better. And yeah, this is also an include. Even though this is a C++, this does not have an import. So we'll FMT and format. Okay, so we're going to need those two things, and we're not going to be initializing or shutting down SDL inside of our class. We're actually going to just do it in a function, because our class is going to be holding on to all the pointers as smart pointers, and they're going to go out of scope on their own, and we want the SDL2 to be shut down after those things go out of scope. So it cannot be in the destructor. It needs to be in something entirely different. It needs to be in its own scope. So our initialization and our basic starting up of SDL systems and shutting down of SDL systems will be in their own standalone functions. So I'm just going to call it Initialize SDL2, or just SDL is fine. And this is it's name colon type, which is a function, no parameters, and equals the block. And it doesn't even have to be a block. SDL2 syntax, if it's just a single one-liner thing, you can just put it on the next line below. It's fine, but everything I'm doing is going to be in a block. So I'm going to say SDL quit. That was the function for shutting down SDL2. Oh, sorry, not we need the one for setting it up. So it's not SDL quit, it's SDL init. And we're going to use that macro, that SDL init everything. And that is a preprocessor macro, I believe. It's either a enum or a macro, something that's returning it's returning a flag to SDL to know to initialize everything. So we have SDL init everything, and we want to know if this failed or not. So I'm going to wrap this in an if statement. And we know that if it succeeds, it's 0. If it fails, it's I think a negative number. So we will just a simple if statement will catch the failure. And the way we're going to have it fail out is we're going to create a throw, but I don't think throw is either fully implemented or it's not going to be fully implemented. I'm not sure exactly what's going on with throw in CppF2, but there's assert, and if assert fails, the program just shuts down. It doesn't unwind gracefully, it just shuts down. And if you'd use throw, the same thing happens. But at least with throw, we can give it a message. We know what happened, why it shut down. But it does not gracefully shut down. So that this project will have no graceful shutdown. If something goes wrong, it's just shutting down. There's no unwinding. There's no cleaning up after itself. It's just shutting down. I mean, the system will take back the memory, but I still like to have things shut down in an orderly fashion. And that's not going to happen here. So what we're going to do is we're just going to make this error. And we're using the FMT. Let's see, FMT. And well, we'll talk to it when we get to it. So this is kind of the message that I'm making. Error initializing SDL2. Or I'll just say SDL, it's good enough. And then what I want to add to this message is the actual SDL error. So let's look it up real quick. So SDL get error, it just returns a string with the internal error from whatever happened with SDL. So we're going to be using that. So that is that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to throw that as a runtime error. Now this kind of confused me here, so I do not know if this throw is part of CppF2 or C++, because normally throw would be throw space, but for here that doesn't work. It's a function. And I know internally I did find that there's a capital T throw, but that one is meant for sending a message if you want it to hook somewhere else. But I have no reason to do that because my entire message is here. I don't need to repeat the message. Like it would say the message you just created, and then do you want to tack on another message to it? And I already have the message I created. So I'm going to use the small t throw, but I actually do not understand if it's part of CppF2 or what's the story with it. But it does not unwind gracefully. There is no try catch. It's just going to shut down. So std runtime error, and then that's going to be the error message we made above. So I'm going to be using this pattern throughout right here, formulating my error message and then throwing. But like I said, this does not unwind the stack or anything. It just exits the program. But at least it gives you the error message, so you kind of know where to look for it. So that's initializing SDL. And we'll be initializing other systems as well for SDL. So it'll all be in this, this part right here. And then close SDL. And this one is just SDL quit. And it's a void function and it takes no arguments. Okay, and like I said, this one, I could put this one inside of the game, but it's not really part of the game class. But this one right here, I can't do this, because if I shut down SDL and then the pointers for SDL go out of scope, we'll actually, as our program is shutting down, we'll actually get segmentation faults. So it can't be in the deconstructor, because the smart pointers go out of scope after the deconstructors run. So that just won't work. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put this in a scope. Okay. So I'm putting the whole game, the creation of the game, the instance of the game class, I'm putting that in a scope and before it. So what we want to do is we just want to run the initialize. Oh, I can't. I'm not used to VS Code. I don't know how to get to the other bits in here. There we go. And then down here, we're going to close it down. So we're initializing SDL, we're closing it down, then we'll do all our game stuff. So we have our, we're initializing, we're shutting down SDL. I think we should just try to compile that real quick and make sure no mistakes have been made yet. Because we know in the last video I made several mistakes on the std outs and end line. So I'm going to save it, run it, and we're running it with CppFront. And we were working in the source folder. And I've already made mistakes, yes. Okay. So I was missing some in 26. Oh, this, I missed my equals. So that equals, this is a function call. Hopefully that has sorted it. Okay. Now we pray that this worked, and I got to add in the LFMT and minus L SDL2. Okay. I'm just going to run it. It's going to just output what it outputted before. Yeah, which is fine. It's fine. Okay, so we have the system coming up and being shut down. So we're going to need a couple things. We need a title for our window. So I'm just going to change this message to title. And I'm going to actually initialize it. So I'm going to, instead of this constructor, I'm going to initialize everything here, because what I talked about in the first video, where when you do anything in the constructor, it has to be done in order. To initialize, everything must be initialized. And so if it's not, it's going to tell you, but it's also looking for it in order. That means I can't check to see if anything failed or not while this is happening. So what I'm going to do to get around this is I'm going to give everything an initial state, and then the constructor is going to reassign things, which that's okay. It's not the initial, that's just a reassignment. So I'm going to be doing that. So we'll say open window, and we need a width and a height. Say 800, height And these are just normal ints, I32s, or SDL deals and ints, mostly. So that's our width and our height of our screen. We're going to need a couple pointers, and these are going to be smart pointers. They're going to be, for this project, they're all going to be unique, but later on, if I do a more extensive project, the window and the render may be shared, or at least the render, I'm not sure. But for right now, I'm just going to be using unique pointers. So we need an SDL window, and we need to destroy the window. So let's just look at that real quick. We initialize, and we did quit. So here's the SDL create window, and this function returns a pointer to a heap allocated struct that SDL is creating for us, and that's what's going to be in the smart pointer. So here's the function that creates it, SDL create window, and it needs a title, a string, that's a title, and it needs an X and a Y, which are actually location on your screen, where the top left, it's the X and Y of the top left of the window. And then we have a width of the window and a height of the window. And then we have some flags. So for X and Y, I'm going to be using this macro where it just centers the window for us. This is for both X and Y. I'm going to use SDL window pause centered, and that's going to make sure our window just pops up in the middle of the screen. And for width and height, we're going to use the two I32s we just created. And for flags, I don't think we are using any flags for this one. Yeah, I think they're just oh, we can say show window. We can just leave it like nothing. We just put 0. Yeah. So that's the first one. And it's going to be in a smart pointer, so we need to know how it's deconstructed. And this is how we free up that memory, is with SDL destroy window. And this one is a void function, and it just returns the it just takes in the window, the pointer to the window. So that is the destruction. This is creating it, and the way that we need to check to see if it was created is by seeing if this is a null pointer at the end of this. So with that, let's set one up. So it's going to be called window, and it's an std unique pointer. And this is just standard C++ stuff. This isn't specific to, I mean, the syntax here where we're naming it, but the rest of this is C++. So the thing we want is an SDL, the type is an SDL window. That's the type that it's returning, or a pointer to it. And then we need this this is our deleter, and yeah, it's the type of the deleter or something. Decal type, and we have SDL destroy window. And this is a this needs to be the address. We're sending in the address of the window we're destroying. So in C++, we would put the ampersand here, but in Cpp2 syntax, it goes on the back end. It always goes on the back end when you're when you're using it. It goes in the back, not the front. So, and that's our signature for our pointer. And then I'm going to set it to an initial state because I don't want to deal with the constructor, as I said before. I don't want to deal with the headache that's going to involve. So I'm just going to put null pointer. And it's going to be the SDL destroy window. And that should be it. Yeah. So that is the awesome. Let me close this sidebar here. That's the awesomeness of C++ syntax, needing an entire book to write a pointer. I do like unique pointers and shared pointers, but I think they need to fix the syntax. And it's this C++2 is not fixing that syntax. They do fix a lot of other stuff, but yeah, the namespaces and all of this stuff is just bad to me. Why it needs to be put in 3 times. We're going to be putting the same thing in 3 times. Okay, so for we'll just do the window first. And I do need to, I'm going to make a member function called Initialize. Now this isn't Initialize SDL, this is just initializing the game class, which is going to have the window and the render in it. Initialize, and this is going to be an in-out, because we're mutating something in the class. So it's an in-out this. And this one is going to be why I need it to be here and not in the constructor, because I need to check to see if this has failed or not. So we're doing a window.reset on this pointer. And it's going to be SDL create window. And we need a couple things. We need the title. So this is the function. We need the title from up here, but we need it as a C string because we're sending it to a C function. So we're going to have title, and we're going to go C string. And then we need our 2 X and Y center positions. So those are going to be SDL window pause center centered. Oh, let me just look. I have undefined on my other one. Centered. Okay. And that's going to be for both. Window centered. And then we have our width and our height, which is just width and height. That is defined up here. It's already been initialized. And we don't need to say this or this pointer or anything like that. So there's our width and our height. And I'm just going to put 0 for the other flags. We don't need any other flags. Okay, so we have this. I don't know if VS Code is going to wrap it for us. Oh, okay, VS Code is not going to wrap it for us. So we could just wrap it. I'll just wrap it like that. So we need to check to see if this is still a null pointer or not, because it doesn't catch it. CppF2 does catch some failed functions and whatnot, but it doesn't catch this. So we need to know if it actually created a window. So we're just seeing if the window didn't get created, and then we're going to run the same kind of error message that we did before down here. I'm going to use the error message just like this. Right here. And I'm going to say error creating a window. Error creating window, and it's an SDL error. Same thing, we're throwing. Okay, so that is going to be our window. And let's just make that, so to initialize this, I'm going to call it from the constructor. I could just put it in there, but I'm gonna have this constructor do several different things. So what I'm just going to have it call this function. Okay, and it doesn't need to be in order. None of that stuff needs to happen because everything I have here so far is already initialized. Everything's initialized. So it's not saying, if any of these things were not yet initialized, I would have to take care of them first before doing anything else. But since I've put an initial state in all of them, I don't need to do that. So I'm just calling my initializer, and it's just creating the window. and the window gets deconstructed when it goes out of scope, when game goes out of scope. So what's going to happen is game gets initiated. This doesn't even exist. Well, they'd still exist, I guess, but we need to get rid of them. Let's just get rid of these so we don't get any errors about that. I don't actually know if it'll let me do this right now because it might say I'm never using it. But anyway, so what's going to happen down here is SDL is getting initialized right here. Then the game comes into scope. It gets created, and this all gets filled out. The pointer's null. The constructor calls this, which resets the pointer to the real window, makes sure that was actually created, or it throws an error and bails out. If it does get created, right away game goes out of scope. So the smart pointer cleans up itself. It destroys the window with the SDL destroy window. Which, do I need to put that on the reset? No, I guess I don't need to put it on the reset of the unique pointer. Yeah. Okay. On shared pointers, you have to put the deconstructor again. But yeah, it's here, I guess. So anyway, so when the smart pointer has the deconstructor already in it, so the up here, this SDL2 destroy window, when this thing goes out of scope, the smart pointer now takes care of itself. It destroys the window, and then after the window is destroyed, now we're calling, because it's in its own scope, now we're calling SDL close. Okay, now I don't know if this code's going to work because we are not actually using game, so it could just say, hey, you're not actually even using this. So, but let's give it a go real quick to see if I haven't made any errors. Okay, local variable. Yeah, it's never used. So we'll just keep moving forward with it. We'll make the render too, because we need a render now. And so create render is a little bit simpler. We just need the window, and then we need an index and flags. So the window is what we've just created. The index of the render driver to initialize, -1 to initialize the first supported. Yeah, so we're going to use -1. And I think we're using 0 on this, but you could use 0, or you could use SDL render accelerated. So I'll use SDL render accelerated. I don't think it's listed here, but or maybe it's here. We're just going to use this one to try to force the hardware, but you could use 0 as well and let it do whatever it wants to do. So we'll make that real quick. It's the same idea. It's going to be a smart pointer, so it's going to have the SDL create render, and then it's going to have this one built into the smart pointer where we got the SDL destroy render, which just has the render passed in, nothing else. So that's what we're going to do first so we can see something happening here. So just like we did up here, it's the same thing. It's going to be render, and it will be another smart pointer, a unique one. And this one's a render, and its deleter or whatever is going to be SDL destroy, not destroy window, destroy render. And the same deal, the ampersand will be on the back end of this. And we're setting it to null as well. Destroy render. Okay, so that is that pointer there. And then we need to do the same thing down here and then initialize. We're going to do the render reset. Oh, sorry, create render. So the reset is just taking this null pointer and setting it to something. It's resetting the unique pointer. So we have the render reset. We're doing the SDL create render, and that's going to take in the window, the render, which render to use, and any flags. So the first one is the window, and we need to get the pointer from the smart pointer, because remember, we're dealing with C here. So we're going to say window, and this is normal C++ style. If you're using modern C++, we're going to say get, and that's getting the pointer from inside of here that's wrapped inside of the smart pointer that we can use with the C functions. Now we're going to say -1, and we'll do the SDL. Is it hardware render? Render accelerated. And this is all caps. This is a macro for an SDL, so it's a flag for SDL. It's either macro or an enum. So that is our SDL create render. We're passing in our window, what render we want, and we want it to be accelerated. I think if it can't accelerate it, it fails. So if that happens to you, try 0 here instead. But I'm going to use the accelerated one. Okay, and we're going to do the exact same thing that we did here with our check. This one's the render. See, creating render. This is still an SDL error, and it throws the same. So now we have our window, pointer to a window, pointer to a renderer. We actually have them populated. We don't need to close anything down. The smart pointers are taking care of that. But what we do need to do is we need to actually do something with them now. So what we need to do is we need to show them. We need to show the right here. So we're going to clear the render, and then we're going to present the render, and then we're going to delay the program so it doesn't shut down before we see the window. So if we were to just open a window right now and delay it, we would get this kind of garbled screen, because what it would do is it would just be showing what's under it would just kind of be an outline of a screen, and it would be showing what's under it, but not really correctly. It's not doing anything. It doesn't have the render. So we need the render to actually clear, and it'll use its default color, which is black, so it'll paint a black render, and then when we present it, it'll actually display that render. And then we're going to delay the program so that we can see it before, so it doesn't just open and close real quick. So if we don't use the render, it may open a window, but that window will kind of look messed up, because it will no longer be displaying what's under the window properly, and it'll look garbled. So we're going to use these 3 functions here. We'll start with the render clear. This just clears a render that you don't even see, that we're going to be drawing on later. Just every frame you clear it, you can start drawing on it. And then when you get done, this is like a back buffer. When you get done, it is the back buffer and the front buffers are flipped. So whatever you were drawing, whatever the person at the computer was looking at was the front buffer. And whatever your game, as it's building up the image of what should be displayed next, is being drawn on the back buffer. So the person at the computer doesn't see anything that's happening on the back buffer. They just see the front buffer. They see the image on their screen, which is the front buffer. So you build up an image on the back buffer, and when you get all done building it up, you can just present it immediately without any kind of time delay happening. And so what you do is you switch the buffers real quick, the back to the front. After the back one was already, you just flip them. And that is called render present. So that's what this does. This says, hey, that buffer that you've been drawing to, let's let the person see it now that it's all done. And then we just need to delay the program so we can actually see that this happened. And we're going to, you use milliseconds here. We're going to use 5,000 milliseconds, so that'll make the window stay open for 5 seconds, and then it will close. And we will not have the ability to close the window. It's going to close itself. That'll be in the next video. In this video, it's just going to open a window for 5 seconds and close it. So render clear. It's just a straightforward function, and we're not checking. We can check to see if this failed. Return 0 on success, but since this is something that will be happening in a game loop at least 60 times a second or more, we're not really interested if it fails one time. So we're not going to check this one. The same with the render present. It doesn't even have it's a void. So and we're not checking if this failed either. It's a void. So we're not checking any of these. These happen in a game loop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new member function called run. So yeah, so I'm going to make a new member function called run. It's a this. So for right now, it's an in this, which means it's getting a const reference to this. But we're not mutating it, so this is fine. Later on, when we do, that it becomes a problem with what I explained in the first video about it trying to do a move on the last instance. So run this. We'll talk about it when we get there. And what we want to do is we just want to do SDL render clear. We need to pass in the render, and we're going to be doing the get on it because it's a smart pointer. So that's going to clear our render, and then we're going to SDL render. Now it's weird. It's almost always renderer, but for this it's render clear and render present. And this is the renderer again. And then so that's gonna clear the render, and that's gonna present the render. Present. I don't know why the syntax highlighting is not making it look like I made a mistake, but maybe it's just not catching up. Anyway, and then we need the SDL delay. And that is going to be 5,000 milliseconds. Okay, so assuming I don't have a mistake here, when I use this run method, it's going to clear the render, present the render, and then just wait 5 seconds. And so we can do game dot run like that. And then it should be open for 5 seconds and close. And I shouldn't have a problem with it because it's not an in out this, it's just a this, which is an in. So this should work right here, hopefully. There is a lot of crossing your fingers with CppF2. Okay, at 31, I've made a mistake. Is it above? Oh, I forgot the equals. That's why. Okay, now hopefully that it compiles. So we have all the libraries already. Okay. There it is. And this window is called open window. If you look right up here on my screen on the top, you'll see I don't have a floating window manager, so you'll see what the title would normally be if you have a floating window manager. And that's exactly what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to open for 5 seconds, stay open for 5 seconds, and then close. If you try to close it, if you in Windows or Mac or GNOME, XFC, KDE, Plasma, whatever you're using, If you have the little the X in the top left-hand corner or the top right-hand corner to close, and you try to close it, you'll probably get something like your program is not responding. It's because we haven't actually implemented the close yet. So it's not looking for that. It's not getting the input on that. So your operating system may say, hey, this thing's not listening to you. But don't worry, it's supposed to stay open for 5 seconds and then close. That's exactly what it's supposed to do. And let's see if we can maybe throw this through a little bit more strict to see if we have any memory leak. Hopefully not. Okay, let's see what we got going on here. This is not what I'm looking for. This is what I'm looking for. I don't need these. Just curious to see what this looks like. Okay, yeah. So this is a really strict one. We got all kinds of, all the warnings are turned on. The warnings are as errors. And then it's actually got a sanitizer for memory leaks. And so that tells me that the memory that I allocated on the unique pointers was actually cleaned up correctly. Let's simulate, I want to simulate an error so you can see this throw. Let's just do this. Let's change the, if the render is something, it'll throw an error. And so you'll see what this looks like, and it will not exit the program in a nice manner. It'll just shut it down. So we need to recompile. Oh, I'll use the big one again. Okay. So we see it terminated. It's a runtime error, and then there's the message that I created, error creating a render. And right after this, there should be the actual error that occurred, but we faked the error, so a real error didn't actually occur. So there is no message there. And then it just shut it down. Now, if we were to put, say, a print message in our deconstructor, right? So our class should be deconstructed here. Let's just make a deconstructor. Operator equals, yeah, equals. And we'll say move this. This would be a deconstructor. And let's just say std c out. Sure, hopefully that's spelled right. I don't know. So there's our deconstructor, right? So let's see what happens if it actually gets called. Let's fix the error first so we can see a good close, a good shutdown. Okay, when it closes in 5 seconds, we should see deconstructor or something like that. Yeah, deconstructor. So the deconstructor got called, yeah? Now, if we simulate this error, okay, the deconstructor didn't get called. So keep that in mind. These throws I'm having, there's no catch with them. There's no try catch, nothing like that. When this throw happens, the program does not go through and unwind the stack. It doesn't do any of those things. It just shuts down. But it does at least give you an error message, which is nice. So let's see here. I'm just going to remove the deconstructor because I'm never going to use it. My smart pointers are cleaning up after themselves, basically. And the SDL shutdown's happening outside of the scope of that. And I'm going to fix the simulated error. So this is kind of what you would see in a modern C++. We have these unique pointers. The syntax is slightly different here with the name of it, and the ampersand being on the back end instead of the front. But that's still a unique pointer. We have our class. We have our initializer list, I guess you might call it. We have our constructor here, which is just calling this other function, which is initializing the window. It's resetting the pointers for the window and the render with the actual values that they need to hold, and they're actually being checked. And then we are clearing the render, we are presenting the render, we're waiting 5 seconds. And then after that, we are closing SDL. So the initialization, the creating of the class, the running of the class, which is just the this one right here. And then there is the closing the SDL. So that's going to be it for this video. Like I said, if you enjoyed this and you like the CPP ID, the idea of the CPP2, this thing, remember all the videos are linked in my the GitHub for this project. There's 2 of them on YouTube that are quite long, but they're good watches. And in the next one, we'll learn how to close the window. So thanks for watching.